It's 7:09 now. Auckland's expensive light rail project is going ahead despite pleas from some to focus infrastructure resources on Cyclone Gabrielle repairs. The Transport Minister, Michael Wood, was quoted yesterday as saying, "I am utterly determined about this. If there was such a thing as a spirit animal, then mine is a donkey. I just keep going with these things, and I'll keep going with this one until we get done." This morning, please welcome National MP Erica Stanford for our regular political panel and Transport Minister Michael Wood.
Morning, Ryan. And do you know my press secretary warned me about that, but I love donkeys. I'm cool with it.
Okay. So you're committed to this. This is your pet project.
That's not the word I would use. This is a Labour Party manifesto commitment that we campaigned on at the last election and said we would deliver. It's something that we need to future-proof Auckland. The problem we have in Auckland and our big cities is 50 years ago we should have built proper linked-up public transport systems and we didn't. That's why we have congestion, urban sprawl and people with no choice but to use their car.
Totally get it. I don't think anyone's going to argue that we haven't invested enough in infrastructure. Right now, though, we're talking about repairs from Cyclone Gabrielle and we're talking about anywhere between $7 and $30 billion, according to Treasury, for this project. Erica, right time, right place?
I don't think so, and I think most Kiwis would agree at the moment. And if you think about the comments from Adrian Orr this week, he said the government need to think about reprioritising spending. And then we've got Grant Robertson going, I'm not ruling out a tax, and we're still going ahead with this $30 billion project. The people of the cyclone-affected regions must be sitting there pretty upset right now. But, you know, also, I would say, I mean, this is the time to have a rethink and go, well, actually, is there something else we could do with the technology that's coming down the line? Are we going to be committed to a fixed rail, old technology mode of transport at a time when it could cost $30 billion and you know it'll blow out?
What are you saying, we're going to fly in drones or something?
No, well, there's all sorts of autonomous vehicles and the fact that we've got this revolution of electric vehicles that is going to solve most of our emissions problems.
Okay.
And there are some other options that we should be considering rather than stuck in this.
This is a very important point. We have to deal with the response in front of us and rebuild the regions that have been devastated. The government will do that. We've committed $250 million to do that job.
As a start?
As a start, and there will be more.
So can you do both? Yes. This is my question. Can you do both without increasing taxes or borrowing?
Ryan, we would be crazy not to do both. We have to deal with the response in front of us, but we have to deal with the future. Yeah, and part of the problem in New Zealand is we haven't dealt with the future investment.
Get it. But can you do both without borrowing money or taxing us more?
Well, we always borrow money for these kinds of projects, whichever the government is.
Yeah, which is inflationary, right?
A really important point to make about these projects, no one's writing out a cheque for the full project this year or next year. These are big projects and networks that you stage out over 10 or 15 years of construction. So Auckland Light Rail, the alternative Waitemata Harbour Crossing, which we're getting on with as well. This will be a long-form project that we roll out in stages. We're looking at doing the same in Christchurch, Wellington, other big growing cities. But I make this point abundantly clear, and it's important people understand it. We have committed to rebuilding our state highway network and the rebuild in the regions affected by Cyclone Gabrielle. But we've got a plan for the future, and
we don't know how we're going to pay for that.
And we've got to also have transport infrastructure that reduces our emissions. Otherwise, we haven't learned the lesson from these events.
I get it, but we don't, Erica, yet know how we're going to pay for all of that stuff.
No, we've had some indications from the Finance Minister that there may be new taxes to pay for that.
Is that fair?
Well, no, it's not entirely fair. What the Minister of Finance has said is it will work through a budget process this year. We haven't made any decisions about that at this stage.
What do you think about a tax? Would you be comfortable with a tax?
It's not something I've really been focused on or contemplated. We'll work through that in the budget.
It's a $30 billion project. You should be thinking about how
you're going to pay for it, surely.
We're talking about the rebuild here. The main commitment that people know is that we will stand by these regions and we will invest in the infrastructure to rebuild. And the budget process will work through how we do that responsibly.
Chris Hipkins came in and he said he was going to focus on bread and butter issues. Is the Auckland Light Rail project bread and butter?
Building a functional, linked-up public transport system for our biggest city is basic transport policy.
Okay, so that's bread and butter. That's a bread and butter issue?
Well, yes, in my view it is, as is climate change.
The sensible thing to do is to go back and say, can we afford 30 billion? Is there something else we can do? We heard that the expert earlier saying, well, it's gold-plated. It's the most expensive light rail in the world. Surely this is a time when we know we've got this investment to make in the East Coast to go, actually, do we need a gold-plated slow tram?
Yeah. Minister, we have to move on to immigration. Big announcement from you this morning on the cyclone response, and I have to commend you for doing it so quickly. The aim is to have these visas processed within 7 days, right? That's an aim. Do you think it'll happen?
In the vast majority of cases, yes. You'll always get a small number of cases where they haven't filed it properly. There are questions about whether they're eligible, and that might take a little bit longer. But 7 days is what will process these, the vast majority of these within.
That's speedy.
We're also putting in place a policy where we'll refund the fee for successful applicants, so we'll take that cost out for people who come here to work.
Erica, do you think this is a good idea? Surely you do.
Well, I sat here last week and suggested it to the Minister, so I'm pleased that he's picked it up. The type of visa that I suggested and that he's gone with does allow you to process much quicker, and I do hope that they are done within 7 days. We'll see what happens. But there are some longer-term issues, though, and that this visa will deal with some of the people who will come in for clearing debris and doing insurance assessment. But actually, the workers who need to come in for the longer-term projects, they ain't coming in on a 6-month visa. So I noticed in the press release it said that they're going to have a look and see what's required in the future for longer-term workers. I've already talked to the people on the ground. They know what's required. I've talked to the civil contractors. They know exactly the people they need, and they can actually identify them overseas and say, look, there's a bunch of workers, for example, in Fiji, just about to finish a project. We could get them in now because we know we need them, but we don't have the visa process because it takes too long right now.
Okay, so are you currently urgently working on a fix for exactly that?
There are two important points here. The first is that in our existing visa processes, actually those roles are the top roles that are coming in. The top 2 roles are labourers and carpenters. 8 of the top 12 roles are in construction in the existing visa system. So that is helping people to get in.
How long is the delay on the visa?
Oh, from beginning to end it can vary, but it takes a number of months.
We don't have
this project.
But that's the purpose of this visa. It's to take down those barriers and get people in very, very quickly for these regions. Once they're here, if we establish that we need them here for a longer period of time, I've then got further advice coming back about how we can facilitate
Here is the misunderstanding that the Michael Wood and the Labour Party have always had about migrants. They think they'll just come in on a temporary visa for 6 months and then they'll just renew. Migrants want stability. They will come in on a 3-year visa. They won't come in on a 6-month. I've already talked to a whole bunch of immigration agents last night because I saw this announcement yesterday.
You don't like that, do you?
They are going to use a different route.
With respect, Erica's just flipped here from saying she suggested the critical purpose visa to now criticising it.
No,
critical purpose visa
it's good
is
for
the same tool that was used after Christchurch and after Kaikoura. And we're using now. Get people in with no friction, very few barriers, and then we can work with them.
Does Erica have a point in that you guys in the Labour Party do have a problem with immigration, with longer-term immigration because the pressure you get from unions?
Well, no, that is completely wrong. Can I give you a very specific fact on that? In 2022, we approved about 140,000 people for residence in New Zealand, 3 times what we've approved in any previous year. We're now up to bringing in more people on temporary work visas than we were pre-COVID. So that idea that somehow we're not supportive of good quality immigration,
fair enough,
just not borne out by the facts.
The Public Service Commission is bringing in staff from the public and private sectors to help with the processing of visas. Is this a new thing, to have private sector employees helping to process visas?
We've been looking really closely at the system and how we can make sure that we continue to improve the processing performance. So there are some specific areas, including identity checks and medical assessors.
Right.
Those are some of the more complex.
So why has it taken so long to get, if we were able to draw on private sector staff to speed up our processing times, why are we only just doing this now?
Well, this is not a wide net. This is a relatively small number of people with quite specialised skills that we bring in. We've been doing lots of things to improve processing time. We've continued to cast our eyes across it. This is another step that we can take.
Okay. Erica, Maureen Pugh, what comes to mind when I say that name?
Well, actually, what comes to mind is the really nasty comment that Michael Wood made to TV3 that night when it went to air. I thought it was not in keeping with how you usually conduct yourself, Michael. I was a bit disappointed.
What did you say? I didn't catch what you said.
Oh, he referred to some nasty comments that were made previously about her. I thought that was
by one of your National Party.
I think that you probably regret saying that.
I do actually a little bit, but because the broader point there should actually be that what we need to focus on is actually doing something about climate change.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether people believe in it or not, the important thing is that you do something about it. That's the National Party's problem.
I wanted to ask you, Erica, because we've got some footage from, I think from that story, from that night, of your reaction to this, which a lot of people, I had a message from a friend saying, gosh, that MP's reaction was quite funny. Take a look.
Of course it is, and you think you can see the effects of that.
She doesn't believe that it's man-made.
Okay.
Well, I was surprised because it's clearly not the National Party position. It's not our leader's position. It's not my position. So there was I was somewhat blindsided at that point in time.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
But look, I guess the lesson is if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
And we'll leave it there. Labour Minister Michael Wood and National MP Erica Stanford, thank you both so much for coming on the show this morning. It's just gone 19 minutes after 7 o'clock.